Welcome back to Real Agency News, Florida Realtors. I'm your host, and I'm bringing you the latest on how Trump's second term could impact the Florida housing market. Make sure you subscribe to our Real Agency YouTube channel for more updates specifically for Florida Realtors. Now let's get right into it with our expert.
With Republicans controlling the Senate and potentially the House, Trump's agenda, especially his housing affordability plans, could see significant movement.
That's right. And we're not starting from scratch. We're already grappling with a housing crisis, high prices, rising mortgage rates, and a major shortage of homes. Realtor.com estimates we're short anywhere between 2.5 to 7.2 million housing units nationwide, accumulated over the past decade. That's a massive gap, especially for a rapidly growing state like Florida.
We can't forget about those rising mortgage rates. They've been a huge barrier for homeownership, especially since the pandemic. Newsweek mentioned Trump advocating for lower rates, but will that actually help? Lower rates might sound appealing, but as Alex Bean, a financial literacy instructor at the University of Tennessee at Martin pointed out, they often lead to even higher prices. It's a tricky situation. Lower rates might bring in more buyers, but if we don't have enough homes to meet that demand, prices will just keep climbing.
Danielle Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com, really emphasized the supply problem in her analysis of Trump's policies.
She brings up some important points. Trump's policies could be a double-edged sword. Some might boost supply, while others might unintentionally backfire.
For example, Trump has talked about cutting back on what he calls unnecessary regulations in housing development. He claims these regulations can add over $90,000 to the cost of a new home. If that's true, cutting them could make a huge difference in affordability.
The National Association of Home Builders agrees that regulations add costs, though their estimates are more conservative, placing site work and permit fees at 7.4% of the average new home cost. Still, that's a significant chunk of change.
Trump's also proposed opening up federal lands for housing development.
Interestingly, that was one point he and his opponent, Kamala Harris, actually agreed on during the campaign. It could potentially increase inventory and bring prices down. However, the challenge is that a lot of this federal land is in the West, not necessarily near the high-demand areas here in Florida.
Hale also pointed out that Trump's focus on curbing inflation could actually have the opposite effect and drive prices even higher.
It's a real concern, and investors are reacting to this uncertainty. Mortgage rates have actually been going up, even though the Fed has been cutting rates. Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, attributes this to fears that a Republican sweep could lead to increased deficit spending and, ultimately, more inflation.
So we have these potential positives like deregulation and opening up federal lands,
Yeah.
but also potential negatives like labor shortages from curbing immigration and the risk of inflation driving up prices. How should Florida realtors make sense of all this?
It's a complex picture for sure. What's crucial for Florida realtors is to stay plugged in, follow these policy developments closely, and analyze how they might affect the Florida housing landscape. For example, Trump's stance on curbing illegal immigration could have a ripple effect on Florida's construction industry, where, according to the Census Bureau, up to a third of residential construction workers are foreign-born.
A labor shortage in Florida could seriously slow down new construction. That wouldn't be good for inventory or prices. What if lower interest rates stimulate demand? But we have increased inflation and rising construction costs at the same time.
That would create a perfect storm, making things very difficult for both buyers and sellers. It's a scenario Florida realtors need to be prepared for. It's not all doom and gloom, though. Newsweek also quoted Jeff Holtzman, COO of RREF Holdings, a Texas-based commercial real estate company, who said that many in the industry believe Trump is good for business.
That makes sense. A pro-business environment could boost the real estate sector.
Exactly. The article from Trout CPA supports that view. They highlight Trump's historically pro-business stance and predict that his second term could lead to renewed interest and investment in real estate.
Holtzman also mentioned that because Trump himself is a real estate developer, there's a feeling that he gets it, that he understands the market.
That perception could definitely boost investor confidence, of course. We have to remember that positive sentiment doesn't always guarantee positive outcomes. We need to watch how his policies actually play out.
Trout CPA also pointed out that Trump's proposed tax agenda for 2025 includes some items that could directly impact real estate. Things like making the 2017 tax cuts permanent and extending 100% bonus depreciation.
Those are big ones. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act had a significant impact on real estate, especially the expansion of bonus depreciation to include used properties. Extending those provisions would definitely encourage development and upgrades. For Florida realtors, this means more potential clients and deals.
They also mentioned opportunity zones, which were introduced in the 2017 Act to encourage investment in economically distressed areas. Trump has talked about expanding that program.
That's another development for Florida realtors to keep an eye on. The effectiveness of opportunity zones has been debated. But if the program is expanded and improved, it could create new opportunities for development and investment, especially in areas that have been overlooked.
Another interesting point they brought up is the potential for unlimited SALT deduction restoration. The cap set by the 2017 Act hit taxpayers in high-tax states pretty hard.
Absolutely, especially in states like Florida with substantial property taxes. Removing that cap could give homeowners more disposable income, which could potentially boost demand in the market.
On the flip side, they also cautioned that Trump's proposed tariffs could increase the cost of imported materials, making renovations more expensive, and potentially impacting the profitability of those projects.
That's a valid concern. Tariffs have been a contentious issue throughout Trump's presidency. Their impact on the construction industry, especially in Florida, which relies on many imported materials, is something to watch closely.
Realtor.com also had some thoughts on the potential impact of Trump's immigration policies.
Their senior economist Ralph McLaughlin warned that a mass deportation policy could severely impact the labor supply in the construction industry, leading to slowdowns in new home building. Remember, we already have a housing shortage. Losing a significant portion of our construction workforce would only worsen the problem.
LendingTree senior economist Jacob Channel argued in the same article that mass deportations wouldn't solve the root cause of housing affordability either. He believes the economic fallout from such a policy could be catastrophic.
Many economists share that view. The housing crisis is a complex issue with many contributing factors. Simple solutions are unlikely to be effective.
Newsweek also mentioned Kamala Harris's housing proposals. Even though she didn't win the election, is there anything relevant for Florida realtors there?
It's still useful to consider those ideas because they highlight different approaches to the issue. For instance, she proposed offering $25,000 in down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers and tax breaks to builders who sell to them.
Those proposals definitely would have stimulated demand. However, it's unclear if they would have addressed the underlying issue of supply.
You're right. Robert Shapiro, the political science professor we mentioned earlier, pointed out that Harris's proposals to offer subsidies and promote deregulation to boost housing supply were generally in line with conservative ideology, whereas the down payment assistance, which could have inflated prices, was not.
So as Florida realtors, what should we take away from all of this? What's the bottom line?
The bottom line is this. Trump's second term presents a mixed bag of opportunities and potential challenges for the Florida housing market. Staying informed, analyzing policy developments, and adapting to the changing market dynamics will be essential for success.
It sounds like we're in for a wild ride in the Florida housing market.
That's a safe bet. And here's another factor for Florida realtors to consider. Trump has talked about a 10-20% universal baseline tariff on imports, with even higher tariffs on Chinese goods.
How would that impact Florida's real estate market?
Florida's construction industry relies heavily on imported materials. Those tariffs could significantly increase construction costs, potentially pushing home prices up even further.
They would definitely make affordability even worse. Is there anything else we should be watching closely?
Keep an eye on interest rates. Even though the Fed has been cutting its benchmark rate, mortgage rates have been rising, investors are clearly nervous about the potential for increased inflation and government borrowing under a second Trump term.
So those rate cuts might not actually translate into lower mortgage rates for buyers.
That's the big question. It all comes down to how investors perceive the long-term economic impacts of Trump's policies.
This is a lot to take in. Any final advice for our Florida realtor listeners?
Stay informed. Be adaptable, and don't be afraid to challenge conventional thinking. This is a time for strategic planning and careful analysis. Remember, knowledge is power, especially in a dynamic market like this.
Solid advice. And remember, for more updates on Florida real estate, make sure to subscribe to our Real Agency YouTube channel. We'll keep you informed as the situation unfolds.
Absolutely. Until next time, stay informed and stay ahead of the curve.
That's all for today's Real Agency News. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you're subscribed for more updates on Florida real estate. We'll be back with more insights soon.